on the East Coast, arguably, with our forecast. So we will be with you in just a minute or two here. And I am going to do my mad sharing super quick. So, Tom, I will.
That's right, guys. John is here. He started the show. We are going live. This is that buffer time. If you're watching us live, we're just kind of milling around, but you can see we have an exciting guest on our show. So we will get to formal introductions in a little bit, but I just want to, for our early viewers, I want to say thank you guys for tuning in. Like always, thanks for being here right away. We do want your comments. We do want your everything to hear about it. If you are watching this on YouTube later, and then leave your comments down below. So hopefully, I think this is probably long enough where we are probably going to go live. So let's start rocking this out, guys. Welcome to A Comic Book Look. John, do you want to give us that extra John Runyon opening?
Of course I can. All right, you guys, welcome to A Comic Book Look. It's your boy John on Demand, aka the comic book you have, aka the media darling, looking so fresh on this Wednesday, aka Comic Book Sabbath. And blessings to all of you, my holy children of the comic book religion. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have our Tom here is in the building. Our Tom, our co-CEO extraordinaire, aka Highlander. There can only be one. And you guys, we have a very special guest this evening. I call him comic book royalty. I am so excited and thankful for this. This is a big deal. So Bill Zanowitz is in the building, you guys, from Comic Book Bears. Love the show. I just ran into them last fall and have just been tuning in and contributing and having a blast. Bill and his team are excellent at interacting as well with their viewers, and so it's a very engaging show. Highly recommend checking them out. Peep the logo on the top right of here, and we'll get some links in there too that we can share out as well. But Bill, thank you so much for spending time with us this evening.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Again, I've been enjoying your show the past few months, and it's really good to be here.
Thank you. Well, perfect. Well, with that, Tom, I'm going to let you ask some questions here, and I got some of my own too. But I will let you go first, Mr. Tom.
Oh, awesome. So, Bill, what we like to do with everybody that comes on A Comic Book Look, now, we want our viewers to get familiar with you. I'm sure if, all of the Comic Book Bears community already knows some of this stuff, but if we could kind of hear, what your history with comic books is, where you got your start with comics, and then if you can tag the very end with how you got in to start doing Comic Book Bears.
Oh, sure thing. In terms of reading comic books, as you can see, there's more than a little gray here. So yeah, I'm old as sand. For me, I can actually pinpoint a date that was a turning point for comic books. I had a few comics. There's one Walt Disney Digest that's is the oldest surviving one from 1972, but I actually can pinpoint a date where I became a comic book fan, and that is September 8th, 1973, which was the premiere of Super Friends.
Oh, cool.
And there was, though I had exposure to the Adam West Batman series, and some of the Filmation cartoons were on in the New York metropolitan area on the syndicated stations there. It really was Super Friends. As I once put it, I was one little 6-year-old at the beginning of that hour, and I was a completely different 6-year-old at the end of that hour. And the very same day I got my first Mego figures. The Mego was the company that put out the World's Greatest Superheroes. So I had Superman and Aquaman by the end of that day. And then from there, discovered, hey, there are superhero comic books. So I was a rabid comic book reader up until, and I think this is very common for some people, when you hit 13, it's either you really get into that door and you're a comic fan for life, or you split for a bit. And I was one of the split for a bit. As you can see the CDs back here, I'm also a huge music fan. So any money that I was, shelling out that would go to comic books went to import singles and things like that. Cool. And something happened in very early 85, and that was Crisis. And that's when I rediscovered comics. And though I did split again, mostly because of financial reasons, it's, after you graduate college, every dollar counts, and, you kind of get addicted to food and shelter. So was a little bit of time where it wasn't a priority. what really reignited me, though, was when I was in law school. I was a bit older when I went to law school. I started law school at 33, and talk about having no money. I mean, there was just everything was going towards tuition. And I was also on a night track, so money was very, very tight. Wow. And I literally had dozens and dozens and dozens of comic books I never read. So there was this cheap entertainment apart from football, that I could get into. And from there, I slowly but surely really got into fandom for the first time. I was very much a regular on the 11 o'clock comic boards and some other resources. And when LiveJournal was kind of happening before Facebook, I had started a Comic Book Bears page because I'd got to some conventions, and heavy-set bearded guys, they're a rarity at those things, So I started the Comic Book Bears page thinking, there's got to be other people like me, and got to be other people that are, cut from the same cloth. So it initially started as a LiveJournal page, and then when podcasts started happening, we transitioned to that. We started in April of 2012, so we're going on 11 years this upcoming April. That was my math right? Yeah. And we went to a video format at the start of the lockdown, and have been kind of coexisting as an audio and a video podcast since that time.
Awesome.
And
That's so cool.
we currently have 3 other co-hosts, Brian Pittard, who's been with me almost from the beginning, Steve Morey, who just we had to have him the first time he came on. It was like, we're keeping him. And we also have Caleb Alexander McKenzie, who is, as we said, if we're a team, we're the defenders, we're not a team. So Caleb is actually currently in law school. So, I certainly can appreciate, how time is at a premium then. So he joins us whenever he can. And Matt Brossard is a former co-host, and he's usually active on some of the live streams. And that's where we are with the podcast. We have a new episode tomorrow night if anyone wants to join in. We have Steve Bryant, who is the writer and artist of Athena Voltaire, that has been at various publishing houses, and he has a Kickstarter for the newest project. So that's where we are with Comic Book Bears. Hairy heavy homos, but you don't have to be a hairy heavy homo to listen in.
Exactly. I can't grow a beard to save my life. All I want to do is grow a beard. But, well, that's just not in the cards. I'm a 36-year-old man with a baby face. But what are you going to do? That's just my lot in life. But, oh, man, that sounds so cool. And for being around that long, me and John think our show is old, but we don't hit 10 years until July. So that's so cool. And then to see that you transition to taking advantage of remote video during the pandemic, that's so smart and so great. And then
and it was also I think that was like psychologically a very good mechanism to stay in touch with the world, in a sense.
Exactly.
It can be rough, and to have that outlet, not every week, but almost every week, was a real boon to mental health, I think. I wish everybody had something like that.
Yeah. Same with me and John. I mean, you can't see John all the time in person, but like when I get to come and hang out with him for this, while every Wednesday night, it's like, oh man, I love comic books. I thank God I have John as my outlet to talk about it. And then I appreciate all the listeners who follow along with us, man. It's totally cool. And that such a rad story of, I know me and John have both been there where of picking up comics, kind of going down a little bit and then jumping back on. For me, I did that same exact thing. I loved comics, but like when I was growing up, my parents would not buy me comics. So I'd have to pinch for comics. And then at high school came along and I wanted to, put gas in my car and I wanted to do these other things that I just wasn't focused on it. And then it wasn't until I was about, 19 years old that then I came home from college. I was spending way too much money at the bar. I was like, let's push this back. Let's push this back a little bit. Stop this party lifestyle, and you can spend that same amount of money on comics. And now I'm, been here ever since, following those same storylines for so long and loving every second.
Yeah, absolutely. Weighing in here, actually, we have a familiar face or two saying howdy to you. So Steve is weighing in saying howdy, guys, and hey, that dude looks familiar. So fantastic. Thank you, Steve, for tuning in. And of course, Mr. James, ever faithful and so amazing. Good night, gents. Hey, Bill's here. Yes, familiar faces all around. So you are not on a different day. It's not Thursday. I promise it's Wednesday. And Bill will be showing up tomorrow as well. But yes, no. Well, thank you so much for joining. My questions for you were more so just really thinking about you as a reader. And so in the back, I see all of your CDs. I see boxes off to the side.
This isn't all of them. It goes all the way
around. Yes, sir. Okay.
And this is, we live in a townhouse, so there's not a lot of space because it's New Jersey and things are expensive. So I have a bunker where a lot of the stuff is off-site.
Gotcha.
But there's plenty here. I mean, there's graphic novels over there, graphic novels over there. It's crazy.
So I think I know the answer to this question, but I just want to get your opinion on it because Tom and I have gone back and forth with several guests and each other. It is very evident that you are like me, where you like the physical copy of something versus digital. So tell me about your thoughts about digital, pros and cons, and where you're at with that.
With digital, sometimes for me it comes down to company. I'm very much a DC guy, and for some reason with DC I need the aesthetic of the flipping pages. With Marvel I'm a little happier to put in the digital code, read it later. That was also very helpful when you were again, as I said before, we had started the live broadcast. For a year prior to the lockdown, I traveled. I was away 3-4 nights a week for travel for work. So to have that, I have to say I initially viewed digital as an unfortunate necessity, but I do think that there are some pluses, especially with some of the older comics and some of the recolorings. I mean, particularly the 60s Marvel digital. I mean, those colors pop so beautifully that I think I would prefer to read certain materials digitally right now because of the advancements in technology and some of the other aesthetic values. So I'm kind of like a draw on the digital. It's like I'm glad it exists, but I don't ever want the other to go away.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair way of putting it.
I understand perfectly. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I'm so torn on it because, like, for me, space is entering that kind of premium. We live in a smaller home too. My comics don't even live in here anymore. This used to be all shelves of stuff.
Yeah.
And now it's all downstairs, neatly organized and alphabetized, of course, because I'm particular. But it's so much, and my collection is nothing compared to yours. I guarantee you that. I just broke 5,000 comics, so very small amount. Okay. But they're all long boxes, so moving them is fun. So it's getting to the point where I have to start thinking about, like, do I want to trust digital again? I tried the Marvel Unlimited application when it came out around the same time Guardians of the Galaxy did, and it totally crashed because so many people signed up for the promotional price. So to me, I just said, why would I let the internet tell me when I can read a comic? And so that's my only rationale for having all this mayhem.
I have maintained my DC Universe membership, which became DC Universe Unlimited, and it's still in its infancy, but I do like some of the developments that are happening. They do have a series which is what is it called, From the Shelf or something, or where they are taking inventory stories and publishing them. These may have been stories for anthologies or pitches that got to a first issue stage that never moved farther than that.
Cool.
And I think that kind of use of digital, I think, is something really beneficial.
That's the smartest use. I've actually never heard that. So I mean, that makes me interested in joining. So it's almost like you can't even get this stuff anywhere else, but you would be able to release here. I think that's the smartest way to do digital. I read digital comics all the time. I read comics on my phone, but I have kind of the tier where if I'm really into the comic, I get it physically, simple as that. And if I'm kind of checking it out, then I read it digitally. But I am a collector by day too. I mean, I enjoy collecting the physical item. So, exactly. It can never go away. It will always be a niche thing. Vinyl records are selling more now than they have ever. So it's like there's room for everything.
Yeah, and in terms of music, I've also done the vinyl flip-flop.
Yeah.
For 90s, it was like you can even find vinyl for certain albums.
Exactly.
And now I've like been, slowly filling it, Nevermind and Pretty Hate Machine, slowly filling in as I find stuff. So I've also done the vinyl flip-flop where, for years I just didn't touch it. And some of it just wasn't around.
Yeah.
And now it's and I think streaming is also something that works into this. It's like I'm fine to because I do think that when you do own a vinyl album, it feels more like ownership. Even more than a CD, or certainly more than having a legal download on it. And I think there's something that correlates to comic books as well. You feel more ownership having the single issues, I think.
Great. Yeah. That's right.
And so James just chimed in that the name of the series is Let Them Live, Unpublished Tales from the DC Vault. That's awesome.
I'm checking that out, James. I'm checking it out. That's so cool. Yep.
Got some input from Mr. Steve here, especially now at DC's Digital First Initiative expanding to multiple series. There are a few other reasons to give it a shot. And wasn't this the utility that you had mentioned as well, or that was brought up when I was commenting about Hawk and Dove?
Yes. The 60s Hawk and Dove series is on.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry for that off the wall question. I was just thinking about that. Like, I just saw them in Titans, and I love that iteration of them. And I've never read Hawk and Dove comics to save my life.
Well, Hawk and Dove in the 60s were two brothers.
Oh, okay.
And then in the 80s was when when the Dawn character came in after Dawn.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
But there's still connective tissue.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. Cool. Okay. Well, my other question for you is more so focused on your experience with the show. With the amount of time that you've put into it, I feel like that is certainly something to be celebrated. So, in your opinion, what has been your absolute hands down favorite show of Comic Book Bears and why?
Okay. This is kind of strange to answer this because it's a downer topic. But we did do an episode after the Orlando Pulse shooting. Yeah. And it was very raw. Brian Pittard, who was one of my co-hosts, lost people he knew because he lived in Orlando at the time. And though it wasn't comic book based, that was the time I have to say that I felt we were the most ourselves. And but at the same token, we couldn't have generated a show of what I thought was that quality without having the comic book experience. And we, there were certain ties. One of the people who was shot was a guest on Brian's podcast and was a huge Star Wars fan. So there was some connection to it. But that one always sticks out because there was such a rawness and such a naturalness to it. In terms of something that's a little more upbeat, I really liked our 100th episode because it was just the host. We weren't worried about a guest. We weren't worried about anything like that. And it was kind of a free-for-all, but it still had form and structure. So the 100th one, and Steve just chimed in. It's kind of a funny. It's kind of a funny choice saying the episode about the Orlando Pulse shooting, but it really was one that I'm glad we had it on a number of levels, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important too. Like, I think that, a lot of shows will go through that where there is an event that happens, or I know Tom and I have had some, heavier episodes as well. And it just really just humanizes the whole thing too, that just because you're in front of a camera, there's things going on and you want to acknowledge that in the world too, because that, is why someone reads comics or why someone comes to your show and finds a place to be themselves, or, you just never know who you're talking to. And so it just really humanizes you guys as hosts. So that's cool.
Yeah, and I have to say we are very lucky because we've never had a dud guest. That I'm very, very happy with. We recently had a little bit of sadness because we had Steve Lytle on our show twice, and Legion artist who died of COVID-19. And that's also that kind of feeling of, wow, time's marching on. So in terms of guests, I'm very happy that we never had an awkward appearance. That all the guests we've had on the show have been really cooperative in the interview process, and some of them just blew us away.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's good. Well, good. Well, awesome. Well, thank you. With that, I guarantee you I'll probably think of more things to ask you as we talk about books. Tom, and Bill, I totally forgot to mention this one segment. Tom has the best sound effect ever. Are you able to do it right now, Tom?
I'll get it ready. I'm sorry I'm late, John. I can't believe I didn't have it ready.
No, I totally forgot to mention this.
Oh, it's not even that loud. Let me turn my volume up.
I got it.
All right. Go for it, John. I'm sorry.
Oh no, this one's yours.
All right, hot takes. Here we go. Hot takes. It's coming in. Here's my favorite segment. One more time for you. And here's my hot take today, guys. I am, as you can see, I'm behind me. I'm not in the dungeon. I'm not in my cave with all my comfortable comic books making me feel comfortable sitting around them. But I am in this hotel traveling a little bit for work, being super COVID safe as I possibly can be. And I was able to, even though Rainbow Comics is my home, it is my LCS, my hot take is, guys, I visited a different comic book shop today. So I am in the Tampa area, and I just want to give a shout out because even though Rainbow's my LCS, everybody has an LCS, or even if you're ordering, that is your LCS, and we got to show love to them. And I know that there's enough synergy in the world that if Rainbow's promoting this little comic shop that I went to today, someone else is promoting Rainbow later. So here is me at Comics and Stuff, Peddlers of Picture Books. It was a super little shop here in Tampa. I was so excited to visit there, and I had an absolute great time. The guy, there was no one in there when I went there except for the guy running the shop. He was masked up, made me feel comfortable being from out of town, going into this place. And then I go, hey, I'm here for new comics. You guys get new comics today? He said, of course, right across that back wall. And then when I get to the comics, look at this, John, that's a board. Am I known to board anything? No, I don't beg. I don't board. I stuff 650 comics in one long box. And so this is not my kind of thing. I'm going to probably have to take it out and just shove it into my bag so I get some breaks on this thing. I want my comics worthless. No, just kidding. But anyway, so I got bagged and boarded comics for the first time in I don't even know how long. And it was kind of fun. And then when I did actually end up pulling it out of the sleeve, I was like, yeah, man, it is nice. It is really nice and flat, and it feels like a good book. I understand why all you comic fans out there beg and board. And, maybe I should need to take a tag from Mark and start becoming a bagging and boarding bad boy like himself. So anyway, that's my hot take. Went to a new shop, had a great time, and got bagged and boarded comics.
Yeah, that's always awesome. As I was saying, I travel a lot for work, and over the last few years, I had extended times in Minnesota and in Chicago and in Troy, Michigan, outside of Detroit, and I love discovering, what is somebody else's LCS.
That's right.
And especially in the Midwest, I got to say, some of the best shops I've ever seen have been in the Midwest.
Right.
And that's over here, we're dying. In New York City, there's almost nothing left.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot of shops have closed. Some of them have very different flavors. Some will be like dominated by a Magic the Gathering event going on. Others, you never see that kind of stuff there. But that's one of my favorite things about traveling for work is getting to see some of the shops and the places where I'm working, provided there's time.
Yes.
You know, there's nothing worse when you're like, oh God, I'm working till 9:15. They're open till when? But I'm glad you had that experience. And from what I understand, in Tampa and Clearwater, there's a few good shops.
Yeah, so I went to the first one I looked up. I got to the place and it was like in a big mall, and I was like, I don't want to really go into a mall. And then so I looked up another place, and when you pull it up on Google, they've got probably about 8 or 9 shops here. So I thought that's really cool. Glad to see that kind of thing in the community. And then I'm really glad that this one just happened to be on my way between this house I was at and then my hotel, and it was so nice. It was tucked into a neighborhood. It was clearly like a small shop. And so it's like, yeah, that I definitely love supporting a place like that when I'm out of town. Just like if you are in the Midwest, I mean, I have been to tons of comic books all around the world, probably not as many as you have, but every time I love visiting comics. And I got to say, man, our shop, our Rainbow Comics is such a sick comic shop. So we are super, super lucky in the Midwest. I think it's because we are snowed in all the time and there's not a lot to do. We read a lot of comic books. We buy a lot of pop figures, I guess.
Oh, heavens. Really brilliant note from Steven on the side here. Having stress sweats from picturing Tom shoving floppies willy-nilly in the long boxes. The creases, the potential for tears.
Yeah, no, Steve's wired that particular way. If he ever saw my collection, he'd drop dead. He'd be like, oh, no.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And it's like, again, like someday I'll get to it. And, you know, at this point, it looks like retirement is what will happen. But.
Yep. So, Bill, another question for you that I predicted I would think of stuff later.
Yeah.
Put us in your shoes. All of your travels, including your local stuff, but put us in your shoes. What makes a good comic shop? What do you look for?
Well, it's a little strange because for me, comics was always a very solitary thing. Though I had tons of, like, I throw back to high school, tons of friends to go to rock concerts with. I never had anyone growing up that shared it to the extent or the enthusiasm that I had. A few people in college. So I kind of view the shop. I know for some people it's a tremendously important sense of community that is linked to the shop. I've never had that experience. I just never have. You know, it's just the way things dealt. You know,
totally
just never did. So for me, a good shop, I mean, I think you have to, for me, a good shop, first of all, back issues. You have to have some component of back issues, because back issues tells me that the owner knows history. Much more to an extent of, you know, archives or essentials or, you know, anything on the buy, anything like that, that there's some kind of back issue. Not that it has to be like a back issue slum where, you know, you open a long box and flies come out. You know, it doesn't have to be like that. But I do think a shop should have some component of that. And I think there should also be, for a good shop, some crossover component to things like toys and some of the ephemera. Like, you know, I mean, if I went into a comic shop and they didn't have short boxes or supplies, that tells me they're not going to be around very much longer. But you know, the things for me that denote some sense of history, like wall books, like back issues, I think that's very important. I know it's not the situation everywhere that stores can have, you know, creator in store signings because of geography and expenses. So I don't usually tick a box against the store for that. But the elements that I mentioned, I do think are important. I also think it's also very important to leave your books up as long as you can in the newer racks, because somebody may have jumped on issue 4 and you may have already recycled, the owner may have already put 1 and 2 as returnable. And if the store has the financial capability to avoid that, I do think having a robust news section with stuff that had just previously come out, I think, is important as well. And this is something I've never thought about, so I'm obviously spent.
I love it. You're describing a perfect store. I want to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then follow-up question with that. You had shared about New York. How does New Jersey look like in your surrounding area? Do you have shops in your area? Do you frequent those at all? Or?
I have 2 shops that are within 14 miles.
Mm-hmm.
One's much closer. Used to be more, but economic situations, it's I live right by Princeton University, and you'd think like in a university town would be booming for a comic book store. Not that university. The further you go up north, the more you'll find. The further you go down south, and I think that may be a cultural thing. There's far less shops. So I'm in Central, so in the middle of that, literally. But it's I wouldn't say it's robust as it was in probably the early 2000s, but there's still enough stores surviving. The one sad thing, I don't see any new stores happening, which I do think is a pity, because there certainly are areas where there's a geographic need for something a little closer than what people have. So I would like to see some newer shops open if people were intrepid enough and were able to take chances, because it does seem, like as I had mentioned, we have plenty of college towns, and as far as I know, the one in New Brunswick is closed. One by Rider University is closed. We have plenty of colleges in our areas, and it seems that that would be one formula for potential success, and for whatever reasons that hasn't been the case in the last few years.
Yeah. No worries. No, I'm always curious just because we live out here. So, and my travel for work, for my previous job, I got to definitely visit shops wherever I went because I was there for like career fairs and stuff. But yeah, now with my new job, I'm just kind of stationary, and with COVID, it's certainly stationary.
Yeah.
So Tom, I'm envious of you for being on the road. Yeah. But yeah, well, good. Well, those were my questions for right now.
Okay.
Let's get into those books, Johnny boy.
We gonna do it? We gonna do it?
Yeah.
All right.
Do it up. You started off. I'm sure you got more than me. I have such a small week today, guys. I'm picking up a small amount, I'm sure. Also because I'm at this other LCS, they didn't have quite a huge selection. I don't think they pick up every single book like Rainbow Comics does. So I will, I'm sure, be picking up. Rainbow does the nice thing that you have the new wall, and then you have last week's comics. So I'm just going to have to go with the double it up when I hit it on Wednesday. So I only do have 2 comics. So you might as well, you guys start talking, and I'll chime in when I can.
Yeah, you bet. I'll knock out 2 really quick here off my pile, and then I'll pass it to you, Bill. King in Black, Marvel events and their pesky headers all over my beautiful cover art, and it makes me crabby, and I hate it. But I gotta say, King in Black, this cover was so hot. Like, I love bright colors. I love the randomness and the psychedelics on it. So King in Black issue number 4 variant, just beautiful artwork. I was head over heels with this, and I was like, gimme. And there were only 5 left, whereas the normal cover was stacked like 20 deep or whatever. And then bouncing off of that, just one of the tie-in issues that I got, Planet of the Symbiotes, with what appears to be basically a Venom Godzilla is the way I took that. So I rolled with that cover. Just thoroughly enjoying the event overall. Again, I could do without the little headers that say, hey, this is part of this event. I don't care. Like, I just want to see more of the cover. Because after a while, it just gets kind of redundant for me anyways. So looking forward to checking these out. I haven't read them yet, so I can't review them or anything. But the event as a whole has been actually surprisingly enjoyable. I just think that some of the supplemental side issues, not as needed. And of course, I'm buying a good portion of them because I'm dumb. So, but still enjoyable.
No,
so. But the main book.
That's how you do it, John. Yeah. That's awesome.
Okay. All right, Bill, what do you got?
Okay, so as I mentioned to you guys, but nobody watching knows, so I'll bring it up. I use DCBS comic book service for mail order comics. I do have a very short pull list at a local store. One of the books is Saga, so
Yeah, I haven't seen why.
it hasn't been much lately. But in my DC comic pulls, I've been pulling all of. I get everything DC. I'll just put it that way. Everything DC universe. I'm like the last god I won't get, but.
So you just get it.
This week there's I think 8 future state books that are coming out. And I spent the last few days like going through the future states that came. So this was January and the first week of February. Okay.
Wow.
La Bamba. I mean, it wasn't very interesting. And to think that DC made with the previous Gen 5, whatever initiative they were thinking that this was going to be the direction people would want to see. No, I don't know. But there was one book I thought stood out that I truly enjoyed. And the third issue is out this week or next week. But just to, since I have them all, and that's Dark Detective by Marika Tamaki, sorry. Also, oh God, what's his name? Matthew Rosenberg is doing the backup for Grifters. I believe that's Rosenberg's first work for DC. And we have Joshua Williamson on a Red Hood backup in issue 2. And Dan Mora is doing the interiors for Batman, and just even in the non-Batman shots, I mean, this is exquisite work. And what Dark Detective covers is not the new Batman; it's Bruce Wayne. What happened to him? And in the Gotham that we're dealing with in Future State, there's an entity known as the Magistrate that has basically taken over, for all intents and purposes, most of the duties of the GCPD. And it's a very anti-mask atmosphere, and the anti-mask extends to both heroes and villains. So we have Bruce in a compromised position, and I know we've had 10 years of that, but there is something about this particular entity that I think is much more interesting than things that we've had in the main title for some time. And that she is going to be on Detective, I think, is a very, very inspiring prospect. So that's something I'm really digging. Dark Detective from Future State. The others, oh baby, I love I love when you're talking about comic books, I have half of all the comics DC has ever published. When I put that in on Mike's Amazing World, if you've never seen that website, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm at 51%. I love the DC universe. I'm not exactly crazy about its current situation, but I am seeing this, and also, Tom, maybe you can help me with the name of the writer of Last God, who's going to be taking over the Superman titles.
Yeah.
Phillips in there somewhere. Anyway, his story in Future State is gives me some hope as well.
That's good.
But some of them, I mean, that Wonder Girl that they had so much hype over, woo, it was a Tales of the Underworld story I've probably seen like 15 times.
Yeah, lame.
Yeah, but at least with Dark Detective, there's stuff I like there.
I got to check out that Dark Detective. That's cool.
And also bitch and moan, but it's only 2 months.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And at least switch it up. I mean, I actually don't mind if they kind of do that, and that's usually how it goes, right? Some are hits, some are misses, but it gives the writers at least a chance to do something cool. It's always going to be a little bit difficult. I know, like Nightwing shows up in one and then shows up in Titans, and then it's like it doesn't always meet. It's not like the same character or types because they're all kind of artists doing different stuff, and that can be troubling. But at the same time, I'm happy that DC is saying, "Hey, writers, go think outside the box for a couple months. Let's try to switch it up."
Yeah, and I do think that the kind of the leveling the playing field that they're going to be operating on, especially with so many of the dramatic changes internally, that they do have an external reset and an internal reset, I think is exciting. And also with these books, I mean, though I'm not enjoying a lot of them, they certainly were prepared, by people who cared about the material.
Yeah.
And by adapting what, was going to be a much bigger publishing initiative into something that is a bridge to what will be now, I'm glad this stuff is seeing light of day, even if it's not connecting with me. Yeah. And that they, have this effectively very loose view of continuity at this point. I kind of see that like, let's get the good bits in and see what works, and then we can come up with the definitive history and go from there. I think that's exciting, and I am excited about some of the creative teams, that are hitting in a few months. But I have to go through Future State to get to that.
Yep. Yes. Oh man.
And I hear you. I mean, I think from Comic Book Bears, I am not a negative Nelly. I'm a positive Polly, but when something stinks, you gotta say it stinks.
Yeah, tell the truth. Tell the truth and don't sugarcoat. I was wondering that too. So from your perspective, I got the first issue of one of the Batman Future States. I don't remember what it was because I read it and I said, nope, not for me. Yeah. And I did Wonder Woman as well and Harley Quinn, like that first round that came out. I was just interested. So for me, I'm collecting Batman. I'm collecting Detective. These don't matter. It's okay that I'm not getting the rest of these, and I wait for when it starts back up, and I'm okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. That's the best news. That's the best news. I was interested when you said that review about it last time, and I was like, that's a good take, because that's how I felt. There's a lot of praise around here with some of our other shows that are like, oh man, this is great, and I'm just like, I don't see it, man. Yeah. So when you said that, I'm like, thank you. So somebody gets it. So that makes me happy.
But you're like the second guy I've talked to that said Dark Detective is just by far the best part of. And so I need to go back and get those.
Yeah, I mean, particularly for the writing, she just has a really laser focused take on Bruce Wayne and what makes him tick, and I'm really excited about that carrying over into one of the ongoings.
That's awesome.
I'm really glad she's getting work because I liked her very sad She-Hulk stories. I liked some of the other work she's done for both big and small publishers, and I'm very glad about this development.
Yep, getting the light. So, well, cool. That'll bring up to mine first. I'll take it out of this bag and board, and we'll see if it ever gets put back in. But I am talking about Haha. So we got the same guy who's doing Ice Cream Man. Yay, John! We got the same cover too. I saw there's like a couple covers at this shop, so I don't know. But the first issue I praised because it was because it had this really, really good, which is brutal, but a slow motion bullet through the head scene. Spoiler alert, the guy didn't die. But it is the way that it was written and the way that it was drawn was so unique, and so smartly, crafted that I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely on board. I hopped on with Ice Cream Man at like issue 22, kept reading some of those back issues, but I cracked into this right away, thinking, oh, are we going to go back with that clown family? Nope. A whole different story, so it's completely going to be one shots. Who knows what's going to be that tying element together? I'm sure some sort of comedic event is the thing that ties these all together. But anyway, I'm super excited to crack all the way through this book. I'm only probably made it 4 or 5 pages in, and then John sent me the link to start the show, so I had to stop reading it. But I appreciate, of course, Image Comics doing different stuff, taking pushing boundaries and mixing horror with really bright colors. I mean, even the coloring of the book, it's really bright and pastels, and it adds to that whole element and vibe of it being a dark book. So yeah, definitely, I recommend picking it up though.
Thank you. Awesome. All right. Well, Yeah, I'm excited to try it out. I just was like, I'm going to try out a couple of new things. So, really excited to talk about those. I have no idea what I'm getting into in most cases, but we'll find out. I do know what I'm getting into in this next case, however, and you guys know how I feel about the X-Men train. So, all aboard. I have a couple of issues here. One that really doesn't technically pertain to all of this, but I'm getting it anyways. But first, let's talk about Marauders, which is a fantastic series. We got Iceman and Pyro hanging out there. Issue 18, which is so exciting to say for an offshoot X title. Issue 18. That like blows my mind. Marvel's like the king of number ones and reboots and all sorts of lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my. Cable issue 8. So, we'll see if this one makes it too much longer. It's still fun. It's a good supplemental read. But I also saw this X-Men Legends issue 1 with a variety of covers available. And I just was like, I'm going to check it out because this is a total 90s nod. We got Havoc in his classic X Factor look and Cyclops and Cable and everybody. It's just classic looks. And I just said, let's go for it. Let's give it a whirl. I need some more X-Men in my life. So we're going to go and give it a shot. I have said this every episode, though, the Krakoa situation. I had a chance to talk to Steve about this last night from Comic Book Bears, and we were talking about X-Men, and I just said, I can't get enough of it. All the titles are solid. It's fun. It's like a big soap opera with a lot of superpowers and buff guys and ladies being amazing, and it just makes me so happy. Like, it is the cartoon that I watched growing up, but across multiple books, and it makes me the happiest person ever. It really is a truly ongoing event, even though it's not a formal event, and I love how they complement each other. So can't recommend it enough. Oh, and James has got my back, as we see here. My mouth totally ran away.
And I also see Steven had a comment that was it's Miriko Tamaki. So yeah, that's the creator that I couldn't think of, but thank you so much, Steven.
Yep. But no, James, completely agreed with that. Sword has been also equally fun. It's just such a fun time right now in the X-Men part of the Marvel U. So certainly a strong offering, but I will quit gushing. Bill, on you.
Okay, on me. Yep. So I swear to God, it's not just big two books that I get. I do get my share of indies. Books that will be coming to me from this week from independent publishers. Penultiman #5 and Second Coming, Only Begotten Son #2, both from Ahoy Comics. Barbalian Red Planet #4 from Dark Horse, which is part of the Black Hammer universe. And that's it, apart from... I am getting one Marvel title, which is the facsimile edition of Black Knight #1 from the 50s. If I can use my time to talk indie... My recommendation is the first issue of Serial from Terry Moore. If Terry Moore is a familiar name to you, it's most likely because of Strangers in Paradise. And his last series, 5 Years, brought books like Rachel Rising and Motor Girl, basically confirmed they're all in the same universe. And what Serial 1 number does, it takes one of the characters from Rachel Rising, Zoe, who is 60 years old but has never aged past 10 years old and had a demon inside of her, which made her become a serial killer. But even that is very much a oversimplification. But you don't need to know too much about that going into this. We open up where it is it seems to be a small community, and there is an older friend of a teenage girl, Kendall, who is sexually assaulting this girl, actually a friend of her father. And Kendall turns out to be not Kendall, but somebody else. You got to let the story play out.
Harry Moore, man, that's so awesome. I love that. I haven't even heard of this.
Yeah, it really didn't get a lot of publicity. And I think some of that was because Abstract Studios was kind of dormant for a little while, his publishing house. But yeah, no, this is out there now, and it's really cool that and this is if people were used to Strangers in Paradise, you're kind of used to very, very turbulent shifts in tone, and we have that here of going from a very adult story into hyper violent but funny art where Zoe gets to kill clowns and Bigfoot.
Yes.
And, You're not exactly sure why she's where she is in a camper van, and it what legally must be 10 years old, but she's driving. Got to let the story play out. Serial certainly has a connection to the actions that take place in the story, and I'm really interested to see how this plays out, because issue number 2 could be completely different from issue number 1. But I do think 5 years was very brave in taking these very disparate, seemingly unconnected worlds together in a sense, and that continues in Serial. So that's for an independent book, that's one I would suggest people grab. Came out about, I think, 3 weeks ago, so should still be in there, but it also sold enough for a second printing, so
awesome.
Be on the lookout for that.
Cool. That's so cool. I haven't seen that, and I'm a big Strangers from Paradise fan, and I read Rachel Rising. I mean, I would, if it's Terry Moore, I usually pick it up. So yeah, I don't know if I just didn't see it, or I guess I didn't even heard anybody else talking about it. Man, I can't wait.
When I saw the solicits, there wasn't anything distinctive about the ad, Terry Moore returns to comics or anything like that. So I'm very happy to be the town crier for that. So
exactly. Now I'll be talking about it too, because I mean, I read his comics. Simple as that. Yeah. So yeah.
And I also got to see, just to mention another book, and I have to thank you guys so much 2 weeks ago, because Luna was a book that I had pre-ordered, and then I took it off of the pre-order. Luckily, I went to the dentist, which wasn't fun, but there was a new comic book store by the dentist, and I picked up with the Jenny Frison variant cover of that, and this is also a series I'm going to be continuing.
Wasn't that fun?
I did talk about this show in the Beers, but I have to thank you guys, because I checked my ledger, and Luna was not coming in the future books, and had to get it from that point on.
That's awesome.
It was such a fun issue too. Like, I love the artwork in it, and it just was like, it was such a fun break away from the superhero norms. So it's kind of a different story to tell, and I thoroughly enjoyed it myself. So.
Sick. All right, I'll unbag this other one to talk about it. But we're talking Stillwater here. Here's that small community in that Anywhere USA, and it's, you go into the town and you never age. And the people that live in the town, they don't let you leave. And if you do leave, they're going to shoot you in the back, and you're going to, it's not good. So we're still in the middle of this. I'm really, really liking it, though. We get Chip Zdarsky rocking and rolling on the writing details, Roman K. Perez and Mike Spicer on art details. And I just think this is a book that is along the same way me and John talk about Autumnal. It's that I'm not even a horror guy, so I don't know why I have two horror kind of
You're doing great, Tom.
Another kind of darker horror story, but it's told in the best way. Two guys go into town, one of them is murdered, and it's his the person who's living is trapped and forced to not leave this town, and he's going to use that to he's going to try to go into society and break this town from the inside. And so I'm really excited to keep on rocking and rolling through the story. I think Chip's doing a great job.
I do have the first trade for that's coming out at the end of March. I do have that pre-order.
Yeah, I think you'll like it.
Awesome. All right. Well, I got 3 more. All of them are not big too, so you guys will both be proud of me. So first of all, going strictly indie, but off the rails, completely not really. But Boom Studios' finest offering. I love my Power Rangers. I say it every single week when a new title comes out, with the 2 titles right now. But it has been just continued fun, and I have only the best things to say about it. Every issue, I just smile at the end, because it makes me so happy to have an expanded adventure that's not a horrible, repetitious TV show formula. And so it is so much fun to actually see these characters given depth, and what happens after high school, after they graduate from Angel Grove. And so it is pure entertainment. It is fun. I always wonder, the actors that go to the cons, if they read these, what do they think of them? Do they get a kick out of it? So if I ever have the chance to ask one of them that, I will totally do that, just because I'm curious, have you read your comics? How do you feel about them? So certainly curious about that. My other 2 offerings are not Boom, but they are strictly something new. First of all, Image Comics Aria Heavenly Creatures, issue number 1. I really like this cover because it reminded me of me. Like I wake up feeling beautiful, and this is what I look like. So it just said, John, you need to have this. I love Image because they just do auxiliary artwork on the back often, or something that complements, and so I just appreciate that extra content. And it's just something different. Artwork just looks like a lot of fun on the inside, so very vibrant, very colorful, and it is actually a more thick book. And so just really curious to see what's going on here. There's written pages like the X-Men books are doing right now, and then of course the typical comic book style too. So I don't know what I'm getting into, but very excited to check out Aria Heavenly Creatures issue 1 from Image Comics.
Proud that you're jumping on some new books, John, that you haven't heard of. That's always exciting to see, brother.
Yeah. Well, this last one is totally new, but I know I'm going into a good stable here. So Vault, our good friends at Vault, have a book out called Hollow Heart, and this is issue number 1. The cover, vibrant, it just spoke to me. It looked like a lot of fun. And when I flipped through it, I just said, it's like a mecha suit with a pink skull. I'm interested. Like, what the hell's going on?
Why not?
I'm really reading this because Vault's other offerings that I've checked out have just been so much fun. And so I'm really curious just to see if I'll like it or not. But I'm just open to trying new things and seeing, how it goes, and go from there. Yeah, that was my stack for the week. Bill, what you got?
I was just prepared for the 2 books, but I grabbed some others that I can talk about.
Good.
When Sandman Universe debuted, I was really not that impressed with the series of titles that came out, apart from Books of Magic. I did think Books of Magic hit the marks, but the Hellblazer book I thought was, couldn't hold a candle to stuff that's come before. If I read House of Whispers 1,000 times, I still will not understand it. And just the other books didn't really connect with me. I did get the most recent Lucifer trade, which has the issues that were not published because of the lockdown. I haven't gotten to that, but the thing that turned me around for it is the Dreaming Waking Hours. And in these 2 particular issues, these are interlude issues that are going to be a bridge between what happened in the first arc and what will be happening in the second arc. And what you have in these books is a little more connective tissue. I said that twice. I'm sorry for doing that, guys. With the Vertigo universe. So you do have Constantine, and you do have Goldie and Matthew the Raven make some appearances. And it basically gives the supporting characters a bit more time.
Awesome.
Apart from oh Lord in heaven, what's her name? I'm dying. The main character and her time in the section of the Dreaming, which is Shakespeare dominated, which is a great device. But G. Willow Wilson is the writer, and to scratch that classic Vertigo itch, this more than does it. So check out the Dreaming. I think the first trade is out, and it's a very compact story within the 5-issue story. From what I understand, this was initially only supposed to go 6 issues, but now is an ongoing. So at the very least, it's going to issue 12 with the second arc. But I'm really glad to see that, that the sales and the critical response have been sufficient to have it a bit more extended a life. So the Dreaming Waking Hours, 6 and 7 were the issues that I had on hand. But check it out.
I think I definitely will. I've read all the Sandman universe. I've bagged on Sandman a little bit sometimes, being too pretentious at the end. I've always loved Death, and I loved the other ones. I'm a Vertigo freak. I probably own, when I was buying comics, I've always bought every Vertigo. To hear that it's what's her name, G. Willow or something like that.
G. Willow Wilson, yeah.
Willow Wilson. I first heard of that writer during a Vertigo comic that was short-lived called Air, and it got me to look at different comics, the different work that they put out since then. And so I've been it's cool. I'll definitely go and check that out, and just bring back Vertigo already. Okay, I love Vertigo. Come on.
I've always said Vertigo is a comic book death. It's too valuable a name to not resuscitate at some point.
I think they have to. Yeah. And all my favorite books came from him. I mean, Stealth, and I mean, I don't know. There's just so many. It took it to that level. And when I was really young, a young teen, late teenager, and I like gritty comics. I was like, I love all Vertigo. I'm clearly more open-minded. I love a all ages book just as much as I love a gritty comic now. But then it totally was scratching that itch, and I do really like adult themed books, as you can tell. I'm an Image guy. I'm a Vault. I'm an Aftershock guy. So yeah, all that super cool to hear about those books. I will definitely.
Yeah, I do think that if DC / Warner's, let's put it that way, were a little bit more, if they had contracts that were a bit more complementary to what Image offers, I think there's some high profile projects that probably would have ended up at Vertigo instead of some other publishers. And let's face it, there was years and years that Fables kept it alive.
Yeah, exactly.
Kept that entire imprint alive, and but I don't think that takes away from a very storied legacy. And like you said, I want to see Vertigo back proper at some point, and I'm confident it will. There's nothing wrong with putting stuff on ice for a while,
and it'll make it better. It'll make it better.
And it makes you, whether it's a sense of nostalgia or just your proclivities. When it does reignite, I think it'll be. I'd rather it be special than haphazard, and time always provides special over haphazard, I think.
Exactly.
And I was just going to ask: are we talking Vertigo or Steve Rogers? I'm confused. For Captain America. We can put him on ice too.
I love it, John. John, but speaking of, we did get, Fables did keep it going for a long time. So do you think when you and Bill had your huge fight, do you think that's what ended Vertigo, John? Do you think that is what could have put when you and Bill Willingham squared off one-on-one? I'm sorry.
Way to put me on the spot in front of our guests.
I know. Now you have to tell me.
It's completely ridiculous. But I think so. I think that it's obvious that the execs of all the companies tune into our show. And we're just in a humble position. We just tell the truth. And Bill couldn't handle that. So, but no, nothing happened, Bill.
Nothing at all. One time we went to a con. We talked to Bill Willingham for a long time, and he just didn't give John the same amount of time. We'll put it that way. And it was
terrible. I was like, Bill, I'm so excited to meet you. He takes a sip of his coffee. Yeah, here you go. Sign my book. And stuff. Like, Tom gets 20 minutes. I got a slap in the face, and I was like, what did I do?
That happens. I remember one time with Walt Simonson, and he was treating me like he's known me for 30 years. And then sometimes you do have bad experiences with creators. They're not always on their best behavior. At least in the case of two creators, I had less than positive experiences. They were both pretty coked out. So
you have a little bit of an excuse. Yeah.
So there's a little, I'll give a little bit of it, and then there's some that are just. There's one gay creator whose name I'll not mention, who, as far as I'm concerned, they're just a dick, and are just not worth your time. But
and that's too bad.
But it says